Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for Thursday the 18th September 2025. My name is Stuart McDonald and I'm the chair of this panel. The panel is currently streaming from the Georges River Council offices in Hurstville for those people who are joining us online. Just to introduce the panel, my colleagues are on my immediate right is Naomi Fiegel, who's an expert panel member. On my far right is Larissa Ozog, who is also an expert panel member. And on my left is Andrew Lakopoulos, who is a community rep on the panel. So we have a full panel of 4 here today. I'm just going to, you'll have to be patient while I run through the procedures for today's panel and how we're going to operate, and then we'll be throwing it open for people who've registered to speak and address the panel. So we've been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including those matters that are on the agenda today, of which we have 4. In accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, I'd just also like to undertake an acknowledgement of country on behalf of the panel. We acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. We are being webcast, as I've already said, and live streamed, and this recording will also be made available on the council's website. In accordance with the meeting protocols, interested parties are required to register to speak, and as I also mentioned, we have 4 registrations for today. We have 1 speaker for item 1, which is 2 to 4 Victoria Street, Kogarah, and that is Stanislav Shkel. Are you online? Can you just confirm that you're online?
He's actually not there. I've just sent a message to him.
Yeah, okay,
Hopefully
thank
he'll
you.
join shortly.
Item number 2, which is 133 Vanessa Street, Kingsgrove. We have Mark Assad and Josh Glanville. Are you both here? Yep, thank you. I'm just doing a roll call at the moment. And item 4, we have 1 registered speaker, Steve Kieran. I know you're here, Mr. Kieran, and I think we're going to have some other speakers potentially address the panel as well, council officers. So thank you all for attending. I'll now go to disclosures of interest. As required by the panel's code of conduct, members are required to disclose any conflicts in relation to any of the matters on the agenda today. And we've also provided written forms with any declarations of interest. And today I'm the one person who has a declaration, and that's in relation to 2 to 4, Victoria Street, Kogarah, which is the subject of an appeal to the Land Environment Court, and one of my colleagues is acting for the council in relation to that appeal to the court. So I don't feel it's appropriate that I should sit on the consideration of this matter today. So Ms. Fiegel will chair that item, and I'll absent myself from the room during the discussion in the open forum, and then when the panel retires to consider its position in relation to that DA. As I said, we've had we've got 4 items on today's agenda. Just by way of background, the panel's been provided with the assessment reports that council's planning staff have prepared in relation to each of those items. We've also been given the applicant's information that forms part of the development application, all of their documentation, and we've also been provided with objections where they've been received in relation to each of the items. Lastly, the panel has been out earlier today and inspected each of the sites in the company of council officers, and we've received a briefing from the council officers in relation to each of those items. When your name's called, you'll have 3 minutes to present to the panel. I just ask you, when you're finished your presentation, just to be aware that the panel may have questions for you. So just pause at the end of your address, and we're in the knowledge that we may pitch some questions to you. Those people, he's arrived. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Skelton, you're now online. You'll be called to speak when we announce this item on the agenda, 2 to 4 Victoria Street. To manage the live streaming process, of which you, that's the comment is directed to you, and in particular, Mr. Skell today. When you're invited to address the panel, I'm going to ask you to turn your camera on if you're able to, but in the meantime, just keep your microphone off as well until you're invited to address the panel. Just a couple of final comments about the protocols for today's meeting. Just to remind people that any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language may result in that person be exposed to liability, for which the council and the panel takes no responsibility. I'm sure we won't have any of that today, but I'm obliged to give you that warning. Once we've heard from the people registered to speak, we will then retire. I'll close the meeting, and then the panel will retire, and we will make our determinations in relation to each of those items. And the determinations will be available on the council's website once confirmed by the panel, and that's usually within 2 to 3 days of the meeting having been held. As it happens, number 2 to 4 Victoria Street, Kogarah, the item for which I have a conflict, is the first item. So Ms. Fiegel's going to chair this item. You can have all of those notes for what they're worth.
And that is part of my chair. Thank you.
And I'll just retire till I'm called back in. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Stuart McDonald has left the room since he had to clear that interest. So, Mr. Skell, is he online, Cassandra? Do we have?
Yep, okay.
Okay, hi. Thank you. I can see you there now. Now, would you like to address the panel first about what any issues you have, and then the panel may ask you some questions after that? You're the only person speaking to this item.
Fantastic. I apologize in advance if I'll break up. There's been a power outage in our office, so I'm currently hotspotting. So if anything happens and I break away, please proceed without me. Thank you for giving me time to address you today. I am one of the residents of 6 Victoria Street, a building next door to the proposed development. As you've seen, there's been multiple submissions, sort of residents raising their concerns, and I'm kind of representing some of these concerns, and would like to also mention that some of the residents might have not gotten notifications, so weren't able to join this panel addressing. I've read the assessment that the council put together, and I do appreciate how thorough the job has been done, with a few issues that have been pointed out, with kind of like some of the design, some of the apartments missing kitchen, and the garbage disposal and other things. That sort of like was very impressive. The issue that I find particularly affecting me as a resident is that the proposed development was seeking to build additional flats, but only was proposing to build 50% of parking for those apartments. It's, in my opinion, it's a little bit short-sighted as sort of our city continues to grow, different suburbs suffer from lack of parking. Our suburb has an opportunity to continue to sort of evolve and get people to come to our suburb from other suburbs and enjoy our sort of like local businesses. But with new developments, not allocating parking for existing residents makes it a lot harder. Having lived in sort of multiple big cities myself, it's a sort of growing issue. I appreciate that the council is quite thorough and there are policies around it, but I'm not sure how it usually happens with the new developments. But I think this is something that is dear to me. I would like to the developer to address and kind of not leave it to the council and people living there to deal with this, but kind of future-proof our city by building and accommodating people who will be driving and who will be driving, because Kogarah is also a sort of a good central point to drive south and to other suburbs. I think it's quite important. That's all I have. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, please proceed.
Right, thank you. Larissa, do you have any questions? Andrew, do you have any questions, Mr. Shell?
No questions for me. Sorry.
Okay, well, that's and no questions from me either. So thank you very much for speaking to us. That'll help us. So as I don't know whether you heard Stuart's earlier description of how we'll proceed now, is that we will go through this first part of the meeting and have the presentations, and then we will go into a closed meeting and discuss all the issues and then decide what way things should be moving. So thank you, Mr. Shell.
Thank you for your time. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Obviously, now as soon as that item, Stuart McDonald can come back in and can take over chairing the meeting.
All right, moving on to item 2, which is DA 2025/0272 at 133 Vanessa Street, Kingsgrove, and it's for a proposed gym. And the speakers are Mark Assad and Josh Glanville. Would you like to, are you going to speak together or? No, it's up to you. You can come forward individually if that's your preference. I was just asking the question. Just make sure you turn your microphone on and just state your name for the purposes of the recording. Thank you.
Mark Assad. Thank you. In relation to the proposal at Vanessa Street, the main issue that we're trying to tackle really is that we're just trying to thoroughly understand the reasons for refusal, considering that the proposal meets the LEP requirements from a town planning perspective, which is what I'm here for to address. We do meet those parameters. So considering that majority of the refusal relates to the car parking inconsistency, this is a DCP non-compliance, which can be varied through various case law and planning principle. Nevertheless, in relation to the planning contentions, the proposal that I wish to address to the panel is merely that this could be addressed via a deferral with the LPP, in which we can address these contentions that they've mentioned, considering it is a DCP non-compliance. Now, notwithstanding that, I did note within the LPP report that it mentioned that a meeting was had and then a request for information was sent and then a deemed refusal was lodged. I assume the panel may have questions as to why a deemed refusal was lodged, but that was only because of the information we were given by council was that the information wouldn't be supported regardless, hence why a deemed refusal was lodged. Because of course, as you can imagine, the owners and the applicant are looking to have a result with the application. So the main proposal is, from the town planning point of view, is that we can have a deferral with the panel's request so we can address these items. Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. So and other panel members may as well. The critical issue in play seems to be the car parking, both the quantum of it and the layout and associated potential safety concerns that the council has mentioned in the assessment report. And if you've read the assessment report, there's also, I think, reference to 2 existing consents for 2 of the industrial buildings on the site. And the fact that those consents of themselves have a quantum of car parking allocated to those uses as approved. As I understand your application, the concept is that all of the car parking that is currently available for all of the industrial space on the whole of the site is going to be made available to the gym, and that again, as I understand it, please jump in when I'm finished to tell me if I've got this wrong, but the owner of the site has determined that all of those spaces can be allocated to the gym, and that fresh line marking can take place to reflect that. The difficulty with that, as I see, and I'd like your response to this, is that there are existing consents in place, and there's no mechanism as part of this application to amend those existing consents. So it might be your and the landowner's desire to make adjustments to the car parking, but that seems contrary to the established consents that are in place for the land. So I hope you understand my question or point, and I'd like you to respond to that. Thanks.
So exactly what you said. So in addition to the prehistoric consents, they can be either surrendered, but hence why the application was put in to supersede those consents. And in addition, the complex is empty at the moment, so there are no uses for those. I think there's a 2007 and I think another one from the late 90s. So the facility is vacant at the moment. There is a current DA as well lodged with council for, I believe it's squash courts or pickle courts of the nature. And there is another application that is imminent with lodgement with council for a children's indoor recreational facility as well. So the character or the nature of itself is changing in terms of the facility, but in terms of, I don't want to overcommit anything in terms of the traffic and the parking, hence why we have the traffic engineer here. So I'll just touch lightly with those points, and Josh will be able to address that more thoroughly. But the situation is, at the moment, the allotment is empty at this stage, hence why this application has come in to supersede those consents and to rectify the existing non-compliances and tidy that up. That's why on the application you'll see, I believe it's on the site plan, there's existing loading bays that have now turned into allocated car parking spaces. But then again, I'll have Josh provide a more thorough assessment of the parking contentions.
Does this application as part of this application, seek to modify those existing consents?
But they can be, if a deferral is in place, those consents can be surrendered with the landowner's consent if necessary.
Well, for the time being, they run with the land, so they're in place. And in theory, anyone could take up those consents and has access to those parking spaces. I appreciate it's all subject to the landowner agreeing to that. At this moment in time, that sounds like that's the position.
But the site is empty at the moment.
Yeah, we
Completely
observed- we
vacant.
observed that today. So for the the large unit for which there's currently a DA in at the moment for some form of recreation facility, indoor recreation facility, excuse me. What parking is envisaged for that use?
For the squash courts, so in terms of the squash courts, you mean? I wasn't privy to that. We didn't lodge that application, but from what I understand, the car parking rates for the squash court is, I think it's 1 space per XGFA. It's much more lesser than what the gymnasium is. The gymnasium has a much higher car parking rate versus the squash court. So I'm not too sure of the number in terms of how many spaces they are allocated. I believe it's somewhere in the early 10s to mid-teens from memory.
Are they part of the total number of?
The total spaces on site at the moment, I believe, are around the 150 plus benchmark. So they would then take into account with that. So, and then again with the squash courts, from what I saw online, I believe their times are staggered against our gymnasium times at the moment. So, and then again, the traffic engineer will have more detail on the operations of that. But from what I saw online, the squash courts have a much less car parking rate than the gymnasium itself.
I think it would assist the panel if you came forward, Mr. Glanville, and you're answering these questions together. You're hearing the conversation, so just for the purpose of the recording, you're Josh Glanville, and you're the traffic consultant.
Yes, that's correct. And just to answer the question you just posed, on the left-hand side of the site, we're proposing 144 car parking spaces based on the new line marking, and that's accessed from the Crescent. And then there's another driveway that comes off Vanessa Street itself, and there's 23 car parking spaces proposed there. And those 23 car parking spaces will not be used for this gym. That will be used for this other DA that's next door. And based on the proposal that they have put together, those 23 car parking spaces will be adequate for their proposed use. And then the 144 car parking spaces accessed from the Crescent will be for the gymnasium.
And the two vacant, the other two vacant properties?
So obviously this DA is for the entire site, 133 Vanessa Street. And when there's proposed uses in those other sites, they would obviously have to do a DA, and they would have to address how they're going to manage their traffic and car parking. But at the way that it's saying that the owner has provided consent for their site to change the line marking and attributed that to this proposal. And yeah, again, if any of those vacant areas want to operate, they're going to have to do a separate DA, and that will obviously be addressed in another application.
Is there more car parking available for them on site?
Not from the 144 car parking spaces. However, where they could put car parking spaces internally in their proposed uses, potentially. And from what I understand, the owner is very keen for every ongoing use to be recreationally inclined. So there's no more industrial, there's no more trucks, and no more service bays. And I note the council have put in their reason for refusal that service bays will be removed, but that's the whole point of this exercise, to remove those service bays because there's no longer any trucks coming to the site.
I think one of the difficulties, I'll speak on my own behalf, but based on the discussion that we had on site today with other members of the panel, is at the moment it's one large site and it's fully integrated. And what we're dealing now with, being asked to deal with, and the council's being asked to deal with, is piecemeal use of the different buildings without knowing that bigger integrated picture. So to say that those two big sheds that are currently vacant, they'll have to worry about parking in the future, that's their problem. They're my words, not yours, but they'll have to address car parking in the future, and they may not have access to those 144 spaces, is problematic.
Yes, and the other thing to consider is the peak usage time for a gym, because obviously those 144 car parking spaces are not going to be used between all hours of the day. There are going to be peak times and it's going to be off-peak times.
What if there's another gym proposed in one of the other sheds?
Well, then the council has every right to say refuse because you've already got a gym next door and the car parking will not be sufficient. Obviously, it's going to be merit-based when that development application comes in. But yeah, from what I've seen concept plans of pickleball courts, which, as Mark was alluding to just before, they don't have the same car parking demands, and their peak usage is not the same as the gymnasium.
I see. All right, thank you. Questions?
So when, for any other activities, like clearly the information you put in the traffic report shows there's a peak use at like basically 4 till 9 or something, that's your busiest time. But early on, like about 8 o'clock, I haven't got it right in front of me, around that sort of time, you've got about 2/5 of what you have in those peak times. So it's quite heavy usage still in the morning time, which is, have you sort of looked at what other uses could go into those buildings and compared usages and traffic generation to determine that yes, they can all coexist?
So again, I can't really comment on something that I don't know is going to go into those spaces, because obviously we don't know what is going into those sheds opposite. So for me to comment, to answer your question, no, I haven't assessed the traffic generation of all those uses, potential or otherwise. But at the end of the day, those sites are currently vacant, and if the panel is content with surrendering all previous consents, and as I've said before, then whatever use comes in, they're going to have to show how they can coexist with the other uses on site. And not only that, the 144 car parking spaces, the gym doesn't need all those 144 car parking spaces. We've determined that there's only 113 car spaces at any, and that's a very conservative level, and that would be the absolute maximum. So there's still going to be approximately 31 car spaces available for other uses that may come onto the site. And not only that, I think to purely focus on parking when Georges River Council is trying to promote active transportation, again, I find very counterintuitive that we're actually trying to encourage cars not to come to these type of uses. And council on their own website has said we're trying to promote people to cycle to their recreational uses. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration that there's 25 bicycle spaces just for this use, and other uses that come into, if they're recreationally inclined, more bicycle spaces for those I think are a much better option in lieu of actual car parking spaces at the premises.
And just on a little bit of a different slant on this, the car parking is being part of that car parking, that sort of big triangular space, is hard up against the wall of the gym. Hence, there's no dedicated pedestrian pathway going down. Is there any potential to move that off, off the wall so that there's space for a pedestrian path leading into the gym? Just in the interest of safety of people accessing the gym.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the parking layout that has been submitted is a concept, and detailed design, we can put in a 1 metre pedestrian pathway, and from memory, the aisle widths that we've provided, they're larger than the Australian standard. So the Australian standard is only 5.8, and I believe the aisle width that's shown on the plans is larger than that. So that aisle width can be reduced and a 1 metre pedestrian pathway can be provided.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
So,
Mine's more probably not so much a question as something to consider. I would have thought when the industrial complex was built, there would have probably been a DA, and whether that DA would have designated specific parking for each unit or parking for the whole complex, I think needs to be considered. And I think it would have contemplated that each unit had some parking under an industrial use kind of context. And therefore, I think you need to come up with a kind of a parking strategy that considers that. So hence, any new DAs that come in for any of these uses will have designated areas to park. Now, whether your parking wherever you designate it exceeds the controls, you then need to really look at a demand study, whether that's acceptable to council. But I do believe you can't take all the parking for the use and then obviously say the next use has to consider that and basically work off street parking. So I think you need to go right back to basics, look at what's been allocated for each, and it should be really specific on the plan. Unit 1 has these spaces at the front, it's got probably other spaces, there's loading, unloading. This industrial estate would have been designed for specific purposes. And also we were looking at, can trucks turn around with the parking that you've designated? I think it's very problematic. So if users come in here that want to be more wholesale, bigger uses, they then can't because they're constrained by that. I think there's there's some complexity and problems with the parking arrangement, and that's from my perspective. So just wanted to say that, Stuart.
Nicopolis, any questions from you?
No questions from me, thanks.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Oh, sorry, could I address Larissa's point?
Oh,
Just to help?
yeah. If you have a response, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of concept planning before the lodgement. So we lodged a GIPA, and the GIPA results only came back with 2 prehistoric DAs. Prior to that, they couldn't find anything, and the 2 DAs that we did have, one, I think was maybe a unit. The current site that we have the application lodged at the moment had allocated to it maybe, I think it was 25 or 35 spaces, and then there was another use for another unit's warehouse site that had about 15 allocated to it. So we can revise if necessary for deferrals on the cards. That can definitely help. So whatever we can do to assist, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thanks for your assistance and fielding those questions. That has been useful for the panel, I think. So thanks for your attendance and for addressing those matters. And as you heard earlier, we'll consider our position in relation to the DA after the public meeting. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is 222 Connells Point Road, Connells Point, for which we have no speakers. So the panel will also consider this matter in our closed session. The final item is DA 2025/0302, which is Peakhurst Park. It's for a community facility, and the one registered speaker is Steve Kieran, but there's 2 of you, so if you could just identify yourself as well, thanks. Please come forward.
So good afternoon. My name is Tom Heath. I'm the Acting Director of Assets and Infrastructure at George River Council.
Oh, good. Righto. Thanks, Tom. So, yeah, thanks for attending, probably at short notice. Yeah, the panel's likely to have some questions of you, but over to you two gentlemen, if there's anything you want to present to us, or are you just here to field questions?
Just generally here to field some questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. All right, I'll let my colleagues lead off with the questions. Thanks.
Thanks. So, reading the application, I couldn't quite understand what the purpose of the development is, or the use. What's the plan?
So it'll be a community facility. It's an existing facility on site that's been demolished, and will replace that existing building that was there. So it'll be a community facility as per the definition of the LEP, which will give it any type of use such as physical, social, cultural, intellectual development, welfare for the community. And anyone can book that through Council's online booking system and hire that space. To the rear of that building, there is the Nepalese Association.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
The Nepalese Association will be using the rear section of
The office space.
Correct,
So,
yes. Yeah.
Right. So would they be there permanently then?
Yeah, so Council resolved to have a hybrid booking model where the Nepalese Association of Australia has a permanent portion for a 5-year or 10-year period at the rear of the building, while the front area remains a bookable community facility.
Right. Is it possible to incorporate some information around that in the plan of management? Is that because I just found it quite hard to actually think, well, what are we being asked to assess here? Because and it's quite an isolated site as well. So I just couldn't understand the functioning of it. So is that a potential that we could look to see the plan of management being amended?
Yeah, we can put a section there regarding the use. We've done it for other projects that outlines this typical type of uses that will go in there.
Yeah, to explain that.
The plan of management or the consent relates to these type of uses for that site. The definition of community facilities also goes on to mention you can't use it for X, Y, and Z. So that gives you a bit more clarity for council.
Yeah. And can you explain the entrance? So you've got that car parking space at the front that's currently got a chain across it, so you can't access at the moment. The entrance to the facility isn't onto that car parking space. It doesn't front. It doesn't front.
No, it doesn't. No. So if you look on page 292, that shows the zoning of that section of the park, and the 2 lots that are residential dwellings at the moment, that's zoned for a recreation zone, which will be acquired by council, and that area there will be extended out.
Yeah, so council actually owns 13 and 15 Keith Street now. The proposal is to demolish those sites as part of our open space strategy. The concept was therefore to enhance that landscaping and open space at that entrance on the side rather than fronting onto the car park.
So the frontage is actually meant to be to what I can't see.
Keith Street.
Frontage to Keith Street.
Yeah, there'll be a line of sight, direct line of sight to Keith Street.
Right, okay. That explains why it doesn't do that. But then it relies then on the parking that's there at the moment.
Correct. Yes.
So at some stage that would be reconfigured or improved or something? Is that part of the
Potentially,
plan?
it's not part of this application at the moment.
'Cause I was just wondering about safety and security with people accessing the site. What's the lighting like in that area?
So on the plans, we've got on the left-hand side, which is the west side of the building, that's all gated off, where all the services of the building is. And also after the main entry, there's another gated section. So the rear part of the building is all gated. And to the main entry, that will be lit to the street, to the parking area. And then we also got CCTV cameras with recording, which is available. This was also included in the plan management as well.
So sorry, just to repeat that for me then. So that safety and security issue is about safety and security to the car parking area or to Keith Street?
To both. So
Right.
it's future proofing the building in a way, so that at the moment, as it is now, you get main extra access from the car park to the building, to the disabled ramp. There's a line of sight that way. And then as the two other residential properties are acquired and demolished, then that site is also have a direct line of sight to Keith Street, and that is also lit up with, and the window is directly open into that Keith Street frontage.
Is council looking at doing some sort of a strategic plan or something that can show how all this fits? So that, for example, my initial worry that the frontage isn't actually visible from the public spaces. That could give the context of this about how it will work with the other streets and the other properties.
So the 13 and 15 Keith Street are within our open space strategy and our land acquisition strategy. So they're identified as to be acquired. We, as part of a spatial framework, have identified the context of the site. This obviously sits within our generic plan of management, so it doesn't have its own freestanding master plan like a lot of our other broader sites, which have their own plans of management.
So would it be possible? It would be possible for council to prepare some sort of diagram that would show the properties and a sort of a longer term view.
Yep.
Yeah, to give that context.
Yeah,
of
so
how the property works.
as part of our land acquisition strategy, we developed concept designs at that period of time, which demonstrate the opening of that land as open space with a community facility there. They're not specific to the design now, obviously, that we're into a detailed design stage, but that concept stage, it does demonstrate that open space nature of the site. If you'd like to provide them.
So, somebody else want to have some questions? Because I have a few others. So I'll let others. No, keep going because I'll tick off what I've had answered.
I've just got a question, sorry, and I might have overlooked this, but colours, is this, because I'm just concerned it's, do you have a problem if we put a condition on just to be non-reflective, being a white, very white, or like, I don't know the colour scheme, but I'm assuming the panelling is kind of white, and is that what the intention is? Oh, painted or similar white. Okay, sorry, I just saw that. I've been looking through all the plans and I couldn't see a colour schedule, and I was just concerned, thinking it might be quite bright and a bit reflective. So, do you have an objection if we just make sure it's non-reflective colours?
No, the intent was to remain consistent with some of our other community facilities across the LGA, but no issue with that.
And they're probably that colour, kind of light colours.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I did just talk to council staff also. I know you've got an acoustic report, and in that report there's a couple of mitigation measures, a couple of conditions, and it's around, I think, materials and kind of different window types and forms, obviously to keep that acoustic attenuation. So would you have a problem if we pulled those conditions out and put them into the consent, just so that they're more readily seen rather than be in a report kind of adjacent, like sitting to the side of it?
No objection, so that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. And I think, and just timing, what's your timing on this? Like in terms of, I presume it's a grant to construct this, and what is the kind of sequencing or staging of how you anticipate the construction and period, and what is your
If we were to obtain approval, that this is a modular build, so the modular company is waiting for the purchasing of materials. Our grant funding our grant funding milestones are surrounding a large portion of the execution within this calendar year, and that's around this being a modular build where it's all done in a factory. So we're mitigating those weather delays, and we're looking to complete the works within this financial year.
Are you relying on that? Like, is there an urgency to have this sorted?
Yes. Yeah. So this is so the context. The Nepalese Association have, through a federal grant, provided a sum of money to the execution of this project. There are federal grant milestones associated with that we are trying to meet with the process.
Perhaps a comment more so than a question. Just looking at the agenda, page 293, there's a red outline designating the development site, which incorporates the park as well, or portions of the park. So as a community member, it just would have been, I guess, helpful for context to also include those adjoining properties, and what the sort of the long-term outlook would be in that area surrounding the community centre. Just to help visualise the finished result. That was it from me.
Just before you dive in again, sorry to cut across you. Tom, did you say 13 and 15 Key Street are still to be acquired, or they have been acquired?
Have been acquired now. Yeah.
Thank you.
So since it's a modular build, is it something the council's used somewhere else? To say, have you had experience with that form of the development?
No, this is our first use of a modular building
Right.
type. We did the initial resolution was actually to renovate the existing building. Once that was understood that we weren't able to do that based on the structural integrity of that building, we looked at alternative options. We do quite significant sporting community infrastructure builds, and the prices of those is quite prohibitive with the grant funding that we have at this period of time for this project. We continue to look for ways to improve our sustainability in building materials, and this was deemed to be a really good pilot in terms of that sustainability approach, where there's a significant 60% reduction in building costs and building material wastage. So we're looking to incorporate this. If this is successful, we will look to do this for future community facilities. Our public amenities will remain brick and mortar.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm not so worried about it being modular, but things like being a community facility, and that it seems you want some flexibility in its use. I mean, some part, that office being used by Nepalese community, but it actually, one of the conditions in here, or the acoustic report, is saying that you can't have opening windows, for example. So, I don't know whether one of the uses you might want to have is for childcare facilities, or a play group or something like that you would want to be able to access the outside. So just wonder if that's been thought through, or you just accept that it's really just a box that somebody's going to rent or something.
Based on the current understandings of community demand within this area of the local government area, we're looking for a hireable space for this sort of metric, rather than it being a broader usage for a community childcare facility or something like that.
Right.
So at this point in time, the community and our community team are a broad stakeholder in the development of this design, and have been the major client and stakeholder throughout this project. So we've designed it to the expectations that they set.
So things like you might have in there, or people hiring it for family events, that's the type of use you're thinking of, or meetings of an organisation, or near the football fields. the soccer clubs or whatever wanting to have meetings in there, that sort of thing? Is a
Yeah,
the
being-
sort of thing.
Being on a bookable space, there is capacity for either. So, book clubs, sporting meetings, things like that. We
Yeah.
as council use these facilities to have off-site meetings as well. So, hence there's the AV element that's incorporated into this facility. So, yeah, it would sit similar to, say, a Booth Saunders behind us at Hurstville Oval, where it's that horrible community space, but we're sort of flexible, but it sits
Yeah.
within that community
Yeah.
domain.
Yeah, no, that's great. I just said at the start, I had some difficulty trying to get a concept of what it was. So, all right. Oh, yes.
Just to try and complete the bigger picture. So we understand now what's happening to the east for those properties in Key Street. The land to the west on which the former youth building or youth club is located, council is looking to acquire that land as well.
Council has been offered that land previously. It isn't within our current acquisition plan, but it is a noted facility that we would look to take on based on its current form.
So you would anticipate that that'll become part of the open space as well?
At this point in time, we're unsure of what that would be used for. But yeah, there has been offers for the acquisition of that.
Because it is zoned RE1 as well, as you're probably aware.
Yes.
And then just finally from me, the land, there's surplus land at the rear of where this building is going. Is there a plan? Because if this building is erected and the Key Street properties that you've acquired become open space, some sort of recreational frontage to Key Street and to the community facility, that land, surplus land at the rear, looks like it's going to be isolated. Is there some plan for that land?
That land is owned by the Department of Housing. It's not council. We don't.
When I
have
say to the
yeah,
rear, it's
control.
to the north.
Yes, that portion of land behind the red line. That's Department of Housing owns that.
Okay. No.
We are in discussions of what the management and care and control moving
Mr.
forward looks like.
Bass did mention to us before, Department of Housing owns some land, and I had the wrong end of the stick. I was thinking it was the land to the west, but it's the land to the north.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
All right, good. Thank you very much. Any further questions, colleagues? No? Okay. Thanks. Apologies for the grilling, but thank you both. It's been of great assistance to the panel. And Tom, thanks for coming at short notice. Thanks, Mr. Kieran. All right, we've heard from all the registered speakers for today. That being the case, I'm now going to close the meeting at 4:53 p.m. and the panel will retire to consider its position in relation to those 4 DAs. So thanks for those who attended today's meeting, and thanks council officers for your assistance for today's meeting as well. I'll declare the meeting closed.